I'm your host, Steve Schmidt, the CEO and founder of Magnetic. I have Adam Spacht with me today on the Magnetic Podcast. Folks, we are entering season 2 deep in the bowels of the cellars. We are now talking comfortably about content, comfortably enough to invite people from the learning and education department on the show. If you knew me growing up, which is probably about 1% to 2% of you, then you would know that training was always my Achilles heel. I'd say, oh my God, we have training coming up. God, no, take me out of the field. Oh, man.
Worst.
And I never could view it with the ROI. And it still took me until today. It will take me till forever to reinforce that. Forcing myself into learning sucks. I love to learn the things that I want to go learn. Selfish little me, right? Adam, welcome to the show. We're going to talk about learning. We're going to make some fun of it today. But we're also going to make fun of salespeople. We're going to make fun of ourselves. And we're going to keep people listening for 7 minutes because the average dwell time is 6 minutes. So if you're still listening, congratulations. You have a brain and a soul and a heart, and you're smart enough to choose us over everybody else on the internet. Now, Adam, why would anybody choose you to be on their podcast?
Well, you know, I think the real heart and soul of it, Steve, you hit the nail on the head. When most people hear the word training, the first thought that goes through their head is, oh, dear God, get me out of this. I don't want any part of it. People want to focus on what they care about, but training doesn't have to suck. And that's what I do on a daily basis. So I'm looking forward to chatting on a deeper level.
People also don't like things like fitness, eating well. And I said my big word for this year that I really believed is the word because it smacked me in the face. I didn't choose it. I can't do that. Like, oh, it's decency. It's just
live,
man,
laugh, love.
I felt a few consequences last year. And so my word was consequence, right? So training usually prevents a consequence. Not training, you get a consequence. You get a few consequences that slap you in the face like freaking 12-degree winter day over and over and over again. And it hurts and it hurts. And then you say, okay, enough. How could I not do this again? And the trainer goes, well, I'm still here. Still willing. What do they say?
Some ideas.
When the student is ready, the teacher will appear.
It's funny you say that. Every time I start a training session, I have some version of I'm your Gandalf, I'm your spirit guide. We're going on a learning journey, but the learning is your responsibility. I can't make you learn if you're not wanting to. So yeah, like you say, if the audience isn't ready to learn, there's not much I can do to help. You got to be in that space for sure.
Yeah. Well, thank you. You've got to be in the space so it feels punitive. And maybe that was my problem. I always felt like, well, if I'm a top performer, what do I need to learn? I should be doing the training. You know, I mean, being honest, like I really thought I should have. And I don't feel that way now, of course, with what I know. But I thought, well, I know so much more. This trainer hasn't been in the field in at least 10 years. Look at him. He was at Howard Johnson's last night eating ribs. And, 9 times out of 10, that was correct. And that sucked, right? Because you were like, I know this person hasn't sold before and they don't even like sales. And so you got the trainer who was like, I guess I'll do sales training.
Yeah. Well, they're either out of the game completely or they're from a totally different field or a different type of sales. They had a limited little window of success and now they've packaged that into some sort of whiz bang new system.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, sales is sales, right? I mean, there's the core fundamental content or concepts. So you can repackage it into this new great system. But to your point, I grew up as a salesperson and salesperson, sales manager. And if you're sitting in that room and the trainer comes in and you can smell them out in like 2 seconds that they never actually closed the deal. They never actually sat in the room. They never really overcame an objection. They never really built trust. They never really uncovered needs. Yeah. You zone right out.
Yeah. Well, and you zone right out. You waste the trainer's time too. I got to think as a trainer, if I was a salesperson, I walked into a discovery call and then 10 people out of 11 started looking off and checking their phone. I'd be like, well, I can see what you all think of me here. Do you have to have a lot of thick skin as a trainer and sort of get used to the whole, you don't want to be here, but trust me, I've got to keep you engaged enough to want to be here and give you reasons why you should want to be here?
Yeah, you got to earn the sale. Just exactly like in the actual sales role. You have to demonstrate that you've got something of value. You have to win the audience over. You have to kind of burn through that resistance of people who've sat through 97 other sucky trainings before. You have to show them that you've got some ways to do something, not necessarily the only way to do it. So yeah, 100%. And you got to take some barbs along the way because they're going to test you. They're going to push back. They're going to try you out.
Yeah.
So yeah,
it's kind of like a kid, right? I think about this with my kids. I listen to a lot of kid podcasts. Not kid. Well, that's weird. Sorry, let me clarify that before the authorities show up at my house. I listen to a lot of podcasts about parenting, about my.
Do you know the words to Frozen?
Yeah, I would definitely. Come on. I know the words to Frozen. I also know the words to NWA, and I try and not believe that some of the things that the kids do, and then I go back and go, it's not that different from when I was kids. I didn't want to listen. I certainly, at any given choice, would sort of go against the grain and say, like, I'm not eating that because you told me to, or I certainly wasn't aware of like what was in my vegetable. We didn't have the internet, so I didn't scan my food on MyFitnessPal and go, well, I'm getting enough magnesium. Good thing I can be on the football team now. I just kind of existed in life. And I think as a trainer, I looked at educators very, very similar. If someone was smart, my bad thing, my toxic training trait, I guess the toxic training trait was I wanted to listen if they were smart. I go, okay, now I'm listening. But that wasn't always the best trainer. It was the person who maybe knew the most, wrote a book about the things I was interested in. But very few people would like that. Same with my musical taste. I would follow musicians that other people wouldn't like. I'd say, well, you don't appreciate, Radiohead's really an upbeat band. You just don't know it. And they're like, I don't know, man. And I always felt like, what am I missing in the context of the things that everybody else is interested in? And it came to my knowledge that eventually in time that it really behooves people in their careers, in their professional lives, as well as their academic lives, to show up and learn. I believe that learning, Adam, and I'm going to get into this and get your take on it, is one of the things that keeps our brain active. It also keeps us as an active member of society. And by learning, you can, it's one of the greatest currencies. It's one of the greatest wealths. You learn. And now that I listen to podcasts, endless amounts, probably 50 hours a week now of 1.5x learning things I didn't know about, retaining it in my brain, understanding that process. I go, wow, why wasn't I doing this when I was 20? And they're like, yeah, we call it books, dumbass. And you paid a lot of money to go do it. And now you're doing it for free at the gym on a treadmill. Come on, man.
Right. You're seeking it out as opposed to finding a way to get out of the conference room center as quickly as possible.
Yeah. Well, what is that then? What is the human instinct? Get a little psychological with me that refutes learning and thinks, and we can call it an ego. I mean, I realized looking back in mine was, I don't want to learn more. I know what I need to know. Don't mess with me. I got my systems. What is that?
Yeah, there's a natural resistance, I think, especially in high performers, type A's, real go-getters, that they, like you say, I've got my system, I've got my approach. You couple that with the endless sea of horrible trainings and trainers that are out there. And then you couple that with just adult learnings, the way adults learn. Adults, generally speaking, want to have a purpose to their learning. We're not doing this just because I'm sitting around, I got nothing to do. There's got to be, I got to have some form of buy-in.
Yeah.
What's interesting to me is I went down a rabbit hole about a year ago on YouTube, a YouTube rabbit hole.
I love YouTube rabbit holes.
Oh my, dude, it was a condominium that had collapsed in Miami.
Oh boy.
And this one particular individual, I don't remember the creator's name, but anyway, he was going through all the open source information, and he's a mechanical engineer, and he was piecing together his thoughts and theories as to why this happened.
Yep.
I don't know. It popped into my feed. I'm like, I'll check that out. 39 hours later, I've learned everything there is to know about this condominium.
Yeah.
Why did I find value in that? Why did that? I don't know. But it's back to your main point. When we buy in, we'll sit there forever.
Ever.
If we're not bought in, or we've got that resistance to learning, or the trainer hasn't won us over, the psychologically, nope, I'm gone. Thank you.
Seems to me like YouTube's got it figured out then, some sort of algorithmic, less about what you need to know and more about what we're serving you up as you like to learn it, when you want to learn it. Of course, with a few advertisements to keep YouTube alive and those creators out there, which I've started to really appreciate, man. I want to ask you about my next favorite topic. A lot of people say, well, these things are boring, but I think in the world of sales, they're about to become unboring because you have to get good at it. It's called the explainer video.
Oh, absolutely.
It is the well-produced, here is my thing, without having to sit down and go through a goddamn boring demo with me for 45 minutes. Yep. I'm just going to walk you through it. There's a library. If you have this question, watch this video. I'm astonished the amount of SaaS companies who do not have educational resources for their existing customers as well as future customers on their YouTube page. Talk to me about that in terms of education and the gap that at least I see in SaaS, especially earlier stage and mid-stage SaaS. I mean, sure, when you get a D round for 700 million, you should probably have a wiki on your page. I think a lot of customers are missing out on that and, go to the chat bot, but what about a YouTube forum where I could learn this stuff and you update it more than once every 3 years, things like that.
I mean, think about how people buy now versus how they bought maybe when you and I were a little younger and
emotionally on my mobile phone.
Right. And we do so much of the pre-buying experience long before a salesperson either reaches out to us or we reach out to them.
Yeah.
So imagine the power of those explainer videos of, hey, this is our widget. This is what it does. This is the problems it solves.
Yeah.
Here I am as the face of the company building trust and credibility. People buy.
Yeah, I build the product. It's me. It's my product, right?
Yeah. Here's my cool whiz bang thing. And here's why I did it. You can get into the whole what's behind the scenes. Your personality
Ask
can
me
come
questions.
out.
I might answer them.
Right?
I mean, God forbid you come out from the ivory tower and be like, "Oh yeah, do you have a question?"
Oh, you got to. You
don't like
sold
product?
more, but they asked me a question.
Delete. You don't like it? Delete. I think there's a lot of trolling that can happen, and that's a shame. But I go, well, welcome to the internet. I just love this idea that, man, if I had somebody give me $10 million, I'd make the best community training resource library and say, we have a content-rich place. We're going to give this stuff away. We're going to teach you how to use it. We're going to give you video on demand that's just constantly dripping out to you.
Well, I mean, it's the whole social media creator concept just in a sales language and vehicle. And even if you think about it from the old school discovery process, where either a salesperson had to get in a car and go somewhere and all the cost associated with that, or in a more of a SaaS concept, you've got an SDR who's just pounding the phone, which is needed. I get all that. But imagine if you just had this library sitting there, just people interacting with it, and they're doing all the pre-buying work so that theoretically when they finally put a comment in there, or maybe God forbid reach out to your website, so much of that qualification piece is already done at a much lower cost.
It's terrible.
I mean, you could crank out videos
everywhere.
I got a phone right here.
Surgeons,
I mean, you could crank out videos just
orthos. They should wear GoPros and go, hey, follow me around for a day. Like, because then when I want to find out about a surgery, I get, there's what it's like.
Yeah.
Edit it out and show what you can kind of thing. But there's a lot of private practice surgeons. I was sitting down with one the other day. He said, Steve, I see a lot of potential, so much potential. I want to invest in your company. I think that a lot of orthopedic doctors who are in private practice would love this idea of having a YouTube channel where they could have a podcast where potential patients and former patients and people who have nothing better to do, I don't know, than sit around and listen to a podcast about surgery. I said, there'd be 1,000 people listening, a bunch of old people. My mom would be listening. People who are my age who are thinking about a hip surgery. I'd Google you and find you and be like, well, Wednesday he's doing a live. I'm going to get on and ask him a question.
Oh, man, I'm going to talk to Dr. Steve.
Yeah, you don't have to go to the office, and ask him a question, or you don't have to crowdsource Reddit and hope that those people are right, God forbid, because that's never the case. But I think it's the next wall in B2B of saying, if I'm a really good seller, I'm going to say, hey, this is me, and I'm updating people daily. Here's what I'm hearing in the space. I'm going to host a podcast. I'm going to have a customer on every day, or a customer prospect or someone internal. If I'm the CEO, I'm going to say, let's do an internal podcast instead of a freaking team meeting on Friday. And we're going to have different people in the company like contribute, kind of like the old bake a pie. And, and that's the new company vibe. And we're all learning this way. And it's less about the LMS. That's the check in the box on now. It's a 5-point quiz so we can justify the ROI on learning. And it's more about, did you learn? Do you care? Show up to the ones you care about. Don't say we're not trying. We're bringing in learning all the time. We're bringing it outward. And I think that when you educate, we've seen people like Justin Welsh as a solopreneur do very well by educating people for free and pretty much taking apart his book and making it his newsletter and then saying, oh, by the way, you can buy my course. And he makes $1 million a year by teaching people how to be a solopreneur.
Yeah. Alex Sheridan, same sort of general idea. You
use Alex for videos, don't you? I can tell. I love it. I love it. Okay.
Love his stuff. Imagine a sales manager on a Friday, Friday roundtable thing. Instead of, okay, we're going to do, role plays, or we're going to do, we're going to teach you how to spam everybody's inbox with the same email that everybody else is sending them.
Pay attention.
We're going to carve out an hour, and we're going to all record a quick 30-second intro video, and then, go round table on what do you want to include in that? How do you win customers over with that? What have you? Buy Chris Bogue's course, shout out for him about video selling, and then maybe watch that as a group. But this whole idea of content selling, like you say, building a library, investing the sales training time in something like that. Can you imagine the ROI on that? If you have 10 people, 2 of them aren't going to do it, 2 of them are going to crush it, and maybe 3, 4 in the middle will try to do some of it. But imagine the ROI from the side of the spectrum that does it.
Teach people what to do. You'll make so much money. I think back, if you think about the opportunity here, go back in time with me. If you are old enough, and if you're not, just, don't act like you're not old enough to remember what this is like, because they still do it. But the automobile, the year was 2001, 2002, whatever, 2007, YouTube, whenever it came out. And I thought, well, why is this guy just showing everybody how to change the engine oil on YouTube? What a nice guy. But why? And I couldn't figure it out. And I remember someone saying, well, I don't know why. That's really weird how he'd take his time and just do that. A lot of people know that. Why would they stop and make a video out of it? Is it an ego thing? And I was like, I don't know. They must want to feel really important. And what I didn't see was the link below that said, click here to buy Pennzoil. And that gateway was giving that person 10% of every bottle of Pennzoil that they said. And if you want to keep the lights on, don't be afraid to hit subscribe and click on that link below. I am not partial to Pennzoil. I do not get paid by them unless you click that link. So click the link, damn it. Whatever that is. They were getting this residual creator economy money long before we called it creators and economies. It was called advertising, right? Product placement. And so when I think of the new creator economy, I think it's teach for free, product place for money. So if I'm going to go teach a course on top of funnel selling, I don't charge anybody, but I get Gong to give me $100,000 to feature Gong as the call recording software. I think that's the kind of training that when we're giving it away to get people to want to pay attention now, it needs to be great. I really feel like it's got to be great. And I don't know if you've seen Chris Orlov's amazing site called P Club, but I think it's one of the better training repositories that a lot of people have yet to hear about. And it's really the first place. And I'm just bringing this up honestly to say, like, it's mind blowing how a lot of people would say, well, I didn't realize this existed out there. And for, I think, call it $1,000, you can go on and then you can allow your team to be a part of this, and they get certain modules, right? So if you look at this, of course, it's some of those people we know, right? And so you can go in there as a SaaS team and say, oh, I need the cold email conversion course. There's the building the cost of inaction course, the 7-figure seat swelling. I get all these courses as a subscriber, and he's doing a good job of selling, call it that, learning on demand, where now instead of those companies maybe who were having bigger training departments or less effective training departments, he's challenging that, saying, I've got learning in the cloud. You don't need to get a trainer. You can just pay $500 a month, $1,000 a month a person, have unlimited training. Is that an effective model versus, call it, the fly me to Bloomington, Minnesota, feed me, stuff me, get me drunk on tequila, make me regret the night on a Sunday, coming to training on a Monday and be like, well, I'm here.
I remember 3.5% of anything you tell me.
Yeah, I'm here and I can't wait to meet friends. And by Thursday, I'm going to meet. I can't wait to leave.
Yes. That model that you just showed absolutely can be an effective learning strategy for an organization if you really curate the right people and the right topics. And it's like you mentioned with Reddit. There's some great information on Reddit. There's some hot garbage on Reddit. Yeah. And the same thing exists in some of these canned training programs.
Some of them.
I remember
most of them.
A lot of them. Yes.
Mine
I remember
too.
way
I'm
back.
I'm just going to say mine too, by the way, Adam. It's what we knew at the time, right? Like you get it up there and say, I got to tell everybody about this. People need to know this.
Oh, and then they need to know this and this and this. And next thing you know, it's 411 hours later. I remember back in the 80s, a guy, Bob Wiener or something, my dad, who was a salesperson, had some cassettes, if you remember those, popped them in the car. And, it was the same warmed over sales stuff, have a firm, hearty handshake. Some of those canned resources absolutely can be useful. The trick is really picking the right one. I'm a bigger fan of building your own internal training resources because it's not really that hard. It's not that cumbersome. And with all of the tools and resources that we have as part of the social media creator economy, to create your own internal training resources, so easy. And then you can really laser it in on your particular needs, leverage the canned stuff for the generic whatever. But then if you're that ortho and you have a salesperson for some reason who's working for you, you could really dial in the right messaging for that need. You can really dial in the pain points for that industry. Well, you can leverage the culture of that organization. So long story short, I like home built learning programs is a good starting point.
Well, it's what people forget is on Instagram that this is not medical advice,
right?
But yet I'll shove this thing up my earlobe or whatever, like, and just see if it will work. But when it doesn't, and I end up in the emergency room, like, I can't believe you would share that on social media. I don't know. I mean, I didn't think you were crazy enough to do it. It just learning. There's not a limited information seems infinite. It is, to me, the hours in the day, and then eventually your brain kind of goes enough, right? And I love to learn. YouTube, LinkedIn, backend engines, lead systems. I mean, I run a one-person company with an awesome team of writers and freelancers and videographers, right? So for me, my day is bending that neuroplasticity and neurodiversity, where I feel like I'm 46. I've been doing this a while. I can understand their book of business well enough so they don't go hire maybe that CRO. They do trust that I can drive it and understand it. And even some days I go, well, shit, man. I mean, this is beyond me. And it's usually because my brain can't bend that many different directions, or I can't switch from the idea of a CTO thinking about the next phase and generation of DevOps, and then switch to invoice factory, and then switch to negotiation training, because it's a totally different problem being solved. It's a totally different buyer. It's a totally different social channel, different tone, different message. But that's what I love about it, because I was always so bored selling one thing, and I sold T-Mobile, Adam. The trainers there hated me and loved me. Loved me because I challenged them to make them better. Hated me because I knew way more than them about the CRM. They didn't know shit about Salesforce. And I'd be like, when you can train me on Salesforce and the rest of the team here, come back. Until then, it was a joke, but I think they were kind of like, I don't think he's really joking. I think he's serious. I just felt like, I can't believe a company like us doesn't have a formalized training program. I can't believe we bring in just people once a year and we show up in a conference room, pay a bunch of money to get everybody drunk, call the sales kickoff, and expect that to stick. And because it never
that makes no impact.
It made me so pissed. And it wasn't even my money. I couldn't even manage my own money correctly. So I was sitting there judging other people, of course, like, what would they do? What a waste of money. But, and I'd go and I'd say, well, nobody retains anything. Like, I don't even know when we're going to ever talk about who stole my cheese again, because that was a great book. Cool. I read it like 6 times. But we've never implemented it. The Challenger sale, beautiful sales methodology. Good luck training a culture on that. That involves some serious investment.
Yeah.
And I felt like basic training is enough for a lot of people. I feel like upskilling would retain certain people at companies. Talk to me about the importance between the two. So getting people trained in to be a good employee versus upskilling them to keep them longer, to retain them, to maximize, call it, their productivity. What is the difference that a trainer needs to have versus, like, I am the gateway drug, welcome to the clown show, versus I'm going to upskill you now? Is it more of a specialization, right?
Yeah, I think the real difference, Steve, is that when you're doing the basic training, you're trying to accomplish a couple different things at once. You kind of hit the nail on the head. It's, here's the basic skills for the role. You're doing some culture, or hopefully in a good program, you're doing some culture education about the organization. You're also doing some evaluation of those new hires. Is this really a good fit? Because our recruiting, sourcing, and screening processes on the front end, don't always get the right people in the right seats on the bus. So in new
Mhm.
hire, you're trying to do kind of all of these different things at once, and you have to have a trainer or processes in place to check all those boxes.
Yeah.
Upskilling usually is about, okay, now we have this person who's kind of past this threshold, and
Mhm.
assuming they're not goofing off on the job or what have you,
Mhm.
it's how can we help them be better? How can we help them move forward? So it's much more of a collaborative experience. It's
Mm.
you should be collaborative at the basic training level as well, but at the upskilling level, it's really about how do we get you those tools that you didn't have. And going back to when you were, younger in your sales career, that resistance was, this trainer doesn't know a damn thing, and they're not going to give me anything new.
Yeah.
So I could be out closing a deal right now.
Yeah.
So upskilling is really about, how do I synthesize data and knowledge and tools and get them in this individual's head, give them a little bit of practice to use it so they can go out and be better. So it's two very different overall outcomes that you're trying to achieve
Mhm.
in those two segments.
Neurodiversity, neuroplasticity were big buzzwords, still kind of are, mostly because people don't know what they are, and we're all armchair psychologists. Throwing the
I saw
word,
Dr. Oz once.
yeah, narcissist. That's a great word of 2023 too. Like everybody loved that one all over again. And we all, we're all experts, right? So we can diagnose ourselves, diagnose everybody else. Don't talk about me. Just want to judge you, sort of deal. But I like those words because to me, that is where a lot of satisfaction in my life comes from. Switching topics quickly with clarity. Some people can't do it. It just
Yeah.
throws them off. Whereas others can. Is talk to me about that. Is define what is neurodivergent and neurodiversification, and then neuroplasticity, because those are three different things that are very, very different. And I think a lot of people would be surprised at maybe what the definition is and then how we can use it in our vocabulary.
Well, let's go about it the other way around. How do you switch those topics so that your learners don't get bored?
Mm.
Hugely important. And the adult brain wants to, like I said, learn for some sort of purpose.
Mm.
And if you sit on a topic for 20 minutes, half an hour, something like that,
Yeah.
you're like at collegiate dissertation level, when in most job roles, 10, 15, 20 minutes of topic is enough to kind of get the point across. And most of that time should be them doing something with that information, a game, an activity,
Yeah.
hands-on experience, role play, some of that kind of stuff. The other thought is, how do you get the learner to learn the lesson for themselves?
Mm.
So it's not just, I'm going to transfer this knowledge to you, Steve. Here's this lesson about, ancient Rome and blah, 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 blah. I've already lost you. I can see it in your eyes across the screen.
I love ancient Rome, actually.
Oh, okay. Well, then the second you start trying to cram information into somebody's head, you're going to have that resistance, just like in sales. If you sell to somebody, the resistance is already there.
Yeah.
So how do you get them to figure out the information for themselves? And then again, that's where you get into this idea of, changing subjects, getting some buy-in, and that information is much more fresh in their minds. The last point is really about repetition. How do you give them a chance to go back and repeat and refresh this information?
Mm.
People aren't tape recorders. So just because you said it one time in passing in a 3-hour dissertation, they're not going to retain it.
Mm.
Give them a chance to use it, practice it, apply it, and repeat it some. And then you're going to get much longer retention rates. So when we come back to the big fancy buzzwords, being able to hop between subjects like that, being able to mix things up for people, being able to give them a chance to repeat it, you're going to keep people interested for much longer.
Well, I feel like there's somebody, I'm just going to bring up an example for you. I got a couple more, three more questions here. And we're going to get some tactical advice out to our listeners on things that you would advise them of and to do and not to do. David Goggins is an interesting guy to me. Like I bought his book, read it. I was kind of like, okay, this guy clucks pretty loud. Like I get it. Like this is his thing. And I was like, okay, I listened to him again 2 months ago on the Huberman podcast, Huberman Lab, maybe a month ago. I was blown away. I thought, God, this guy's leveled up. Holy smokes. He was so much better at talking very precisely about exactly what his thoughts were. He didn't mince around it. It was almost like his pitch. Like he knew exactly in the podcast when to be like, I don't know how to be normal. He's like, I start every day in the cellar, man. He goes, and it really resonated with me because I was like, yeah, me too. I'm like, yeah, I start in that really bad place too. You're like, man, I wake up and I feel pretty good. But then I'm like, immediately like, fuck this, fuck that. And it's like, and so I'm listening and I'm nodding my head and I'm like, oh, he knows his audience because I'm not the only one. And the point of where I'm listening the most is when I'm doing this. And you were just nodding your head. We're just going, fuck yeah, man. Like, get me into conversation. And you said something about the way people buy. And I have found that the way that B2B can best think about it, and we can break it down to the salesperson, but I'm really talking about a message on content, is when I'm talking about the problem, you're almost picking up what I'm putting down, and that's the videos you're making, and you go, who the fuck is Adam Spacht? And all of a sudden I'm watching your videos and you're like, here's me next to some woods and I'm talking about this thing in my backyard. Now I'm over here and it's just a regular old guy talking on a porch. I fucking like this guy. Like, this is my kind of guy. Maybe I'm going to follow this guy. And now I'm subscribed to you. I'm going to get every new video you put out. And when I was in this experience, I was in like month 4 of denial that, I got divorced and it was a good idea. And then all of a sudden it struck me after like 8 months that, I want to marry my ex-wife again. And I remember she did not think that was a great idea right away. She thinks it's a better idea now. We're partners. We're back together. But I went back and I went, how to get your ex-wife back when you want to marry her again, but not just sleep with her. Not like that. Like when you really love her or whatever the Google search word was. And all of a sudden there's all these people on YouTube. Of course, there's all these coaches, right?
It's like
400
million responses or suggestions.
Oh my God. And don't even go to Reddit because like Quora, Reddit, like, oh no, like the articles are very judgmental and like it's hard to really follow and watch. But I found a guy eventually after like 3 days of sifting through these, because then the videos know you. And now I'm being fed just this content, right? I'm like, people think I'm a psychopath for sure. I don't even care. But
you're running 30 miles with David Goggins 1 minute.
Oh yeah. It led to, trust me, one thing led to another. But I got to the guy, and the guy who I found was an African-American guy. Really, for all intents and purposes, coached mostly African-American men, didn't know it, but he really resonated with me. I found him, connected with him, bought his learning materials because it wasn't about, it was about being a better person, really. And then I would start to go to his YouTube lives. And then once a week on Thursdays, I'd be like, I'm going to be at his YouTube live. And I was like, oh my God, I'm going to YouTube lives now. What's wrong with me? And then I'd pay $20 because I'd want to ask the first question. And then I was like, oh my God, you can tip them and get to the front of the line. And I'm like, I'm really understanding. I'm like, wait, I do this for a living. I should be taking notes on not only what he's teaching me about, how to get back together with my ex-wife, because those were the great notes. And it took me a long time to really dig into my heels on that. And it continues to in a good way. But like this guy was out there in my head, essentially picking up the sentence. So I was click, 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 buy, trust. And I was very quickly aligned with the person who very kind of uniquely solved my problem. And so my point to you is that experience of maybe what I described to you as unique to me, but very important to me. Like when I went through that, I use that because, wow, I'm convinced that I want to help other people create content that can change their life, and not just crazy ways like that, but other ways like, oh, I need some B2B software. Fuck, if I could just get some piece of software that solved this problem. And then they're like, Adam Spacht goes, and you did. And welcome to our explainer series. We're going to talk about 5 reasons why you wouldn't want to buy our software, because it's not for everybody. You wouldn't want to buy it if you're an early stage company. Our software is 6 figures. We're not going to lie. It's fucking great. Number 2, and then just talk to me, start educating me right away. And I'm trusting you, leaning in, going, fuck yeah, I'll take a demo with these guys. Like they're just telling me I might not be a fit. I'm probably not. And I love that sort of content that's fully frontal. It's educating me. It's overly educating me. It's telling me very precisely what I might be able to solve. Is that the future for B2B? And if so, are we fucked with salespeople at the forefront, or do we have great content creators and trainers like you coming to save our asses yet again?
You can't get away from the training world.
Yeah.
No, I think in basic terms, salespeople are always going to play a role in the process, but what role they play changes and morphs over time.
Yeah.
If you think back to the olden days of medicine men who went out into the great great beyond and plied their goods.
I know one of those guys
whatnot.
now. I call him Ronnie. Is he still a medicine man? That's a never mind.
And medicine man may or may not be an appropriate term
my
anymore.
Uncle Ronnie
I don't even
lives
know.
down the street.
I think you hit the nail on the head. I think businesses are looking for a way to be better, faster, and cheaper of lining up with their core customers and doing so in a more cost-effective way.
There you go.
And the olden days of dispatching a salesperson out to jump on the airplane and go do the milk run, and we're going to Fort Wayne, Indiana, and setting up camp for 3 days, which I've done, by the way. Red Roof Inn.
Yeah, probably multiple times.
Right? All of us, when we need to, or most people, when they need to do something, how do I change the toilet fixture? You go right to YouTube and you start searching that out.
On your mobile phone while you're fixing the toilet and hoping you don't drop it in the toilet.
Exactly. Oh my God, how do I, and they show you how to do the thing. But so imagine if you're an early stage startup and you're like, I need software to do, to catalog whatever. Boom. And now you're in this series and they're telling you, this is how we can help you. This is what we do. This is what we don't do. This is the qualification and discovery process is now so streamlined and cost effective. Yeah. To get back to your main question, no, I don't think salespeople are just, removed from the process. They just got to do the game a little differently.
Yeah.
And then it falls back on trainers, whether internal company trainers or the gurus at large, to say, this is how you do it. It's not that hard. Do ABC.
I feel like if I was a trainer right now, I'd be looking at getting back in the sales game and say, I'm going to go get great at content, get great at producing this kind of content. That's my territory. It's called the world. And my channel there is the internet. And I'm going to build it over time, brick by brick, piece by piece. And I'm going to have a link at the bottom of my page, and I'm going to continue to drive them to call to actions, right?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And we're seeing that. I mean, you and I both spend a lot of time on various platforms, but we're seeing people who say, this is how you do it. And they've got the lives, and they've got the in-person things, and they've got the quick little hit videos, and they've got the click here's and all that. So it's definitely happening. I think it's just, how do you get that out of the world of SaaS and solopreneurs and into the corporate boardroom of the mid-sized companies that are so tied to that traditional sales methodology? Once the 20 to 200 person size organization, once they on average accept this idea of this is what selling can be, oh man, then there's going to be an avalanche of new sales gurus with boring cassette tape series.
Well, I think the viral selling can happen in B2B. I'm not talking about viral posting. I'm talking about viral selling. I'm talking about a rep, for all intents and purposes, that used to say, I can only sell it to Baton Rouge because, that's my territory. They can now sell everywhere. But if they really come up with the best piece of content and make it actionable and consumable and something people can buy or buy from, then that's the source. Like Morning Brew, for example, they're a newsletter. They're a boring newsletter, but they're a very big $500 million boring newsletter that said, like, we're going to go to colleges and we're going to have these college kids be the newsletter for college kids. And we're going to get ambassadors to do it for free. And they're going to be able to sign up kids at their college and tell them that Morning Brew's that's long before really the internet was what it is today. And I think, to your point, sales is sales, doesn't change. The motion changes, maybe the way we consume it. Maybe we don't sign on the dotted line. Maybe we click on, here's my credit card. We buy as quick as we educate ourselves. And we don't understand software a lot. So we have to meet a lot and go, what does it really do? Does it really solve this problem? Because I think that's where the education can't be left in the sales cycle. It needs to be left to them to do it on their own. And to me, what better way to get content out there to help influence, call it the sales cycle, than to give them content to view when you're not around?
Well, and even beyond the evergreen content, which is the main point of what we're talking about, you touched just earlier about the whole idea of incremental revenues. Yeah. So, the primary is give as much as you can away for free. But think about setting up revenue streams of, hey, do you want the 30-minute beginner boot camp on how to use our our product, yeah, we'll do that. It's, whatever, $100, click here, we'll get you signed up. And now you have these customers who maybe are brand new. And now you've got this additional revenue stream, or, pay $20 to be the first time speaker. You get enough people doing that at enough live events over the course of a year, and you got another bucket of income. So those maybe aren't the world's greatest examples.
Well, you just gave us a real life example and a good plug, Adam, because we got one question left. But I'd be remiss to not say that this show is sponsored by the commissions that we earn on our fucking own, and nobody sponsors it at all. But we do feature explainer series, and we're up to about $1,200 a month right now, and people clicking through and buying pieces of software that we talk about, i.e. Apollo, Love Apollo, Self-Disrupt, Ocean.io.
Fantastic.
Different pieces of software that they come and buy their thing. They see value in it. They pay them every month, and we get a little sliver of the pie. And someone said, oh, wow, that's an interesting stream of income. I said, yeah, it's kind of like, I feel grateful. At the same time, I feel like it's starting to pay the bills for the content. And I could see, and someone says, is that the future of your business? I said, well, I mean, shit, in 5 years, I might be able to make a video and be able to have a call to action that makes $10K a month. Wouldn't that be fucking great?
But that's some good beer money, or walking around money, or whatever you want to call it.
But
money.
You pay the price for 10 years to get there, right? Because it's the 10 years of proof before there of, oh, this guy or gal is legit. They know what they're talking about. So when they give me a link to click, I know it's not bullshit or some fly-by-night AI company that's going to steal my credit card information. That Chrome extension worked great until my computer stopped working. And I think that I'm just excited. I'm excited about learning more than I've ever been. I was excited to ask you to be on the show. And you're like, well, I'm not the content expert. I'm like, you are a learning and development person who knows content better to keep people's attention. And that's the question here, is the tactical piece of advice. Tell our listeners before they go, how do you keep people's attention in social content, linked in particular? Maybe you can be a little judgmental in this. How do they keep your attention? What do they not do? What do they do if they're creating content as a salesperson and they want to keep your attention, or a creator in general? Well, we won't even limit it to salespeople.
A couple different things get my attention very quickly. Number one, they get to the point very, very fast. There isn't some long-winded, hi, I'm thing. Number two, they speak in a language that makes sense to me. So it's talking about my pain in a way that makes, there's the right verbiage, the right language that makes sense to me. I'm a sucker for creativity. So if you've got some new weird camera filter or weird transition, or even just the slightest little funny thing in there, let's do that. That's fantastic. And then a little bit of energy, like the presenter, like giving a damn about what it is they're talking about. So those are the things that suck me in quick from a social media perspective. Boring, don't care presentations, dull voices, bad sound quality, bad camera views. It doesn't have to be a Hollywood movie, but if it's like, you're in the bus station bathroom recording this thing,
I might watch that.
I'm out immediately.
Yeah, no, I'm with you.
Well, hey, listen, no judgment.
On your flip phone. I've had some podcast guests join, and they're like in their car, and I'll be like, what's going on? And they're like, oh, I was just driving. Is this, are we recording? I'm like, yeah, it's a podcast. And they're like, oh.
I have more information.
You're like, did you Google what a podcast is? Did you ask your kids at all? And I just am baffled. I'm just like, well, cool. No judgment here. Like, this is just what I do 4 or 5 times a day, every day. Podcasts for me and my clients. I think if anything, I could tell you, I've learned how to do these mostly from the internet. And the learning and development is I did not sit in a class. Could I have paid somebody, a creator out there, to teach me how to start a company, how to create podcasts? Yeah, probably would have been a lot more effective. I am one of those take it under the hood, learn for yourselves kind of guys, Adam. And thank you for coming on and sharing your secrets. You're weighing in on the subject. I asked you some weighty, meaty, end of the day tape questions today. You made it through it. But now the important part, where can they find you, our listeners, online? What is it again you do? How can you help them? And where do you exist on the internet, Adam?
Well, number one, thanks for having me on. I'm super honored. It's a heck of a privilege. NoBoringTraining.com is the best place to reach me. That's where you can find all of our products and services, which really boils down into helping leaders leverage learning as a competitive strategy to affect the metrics that keep them up at night, or to help trainers themselves with no boring training products. So how do you actually deliver an effective training? NoBoringTraining.com is the primary spot. I can be found on all the socials. Follow me on LinkedIn
You got
at
a good
Adam
YouTube,
Spacht
man.
for
Good
daily
YouTube.
tips. And YouTube is growing, and some really new cool stuff coming down the line there. I'm really excited to get those rolled out here in the next month or two. Follow me there. LinkedIn, YouTube, Tick, all of
How
them.
much question for you. I said last question, but I lied. How much time a week do you invest into making content?
I don't know that I've ever measured it. I would say a lot, more than my family cares for. I would say probably a good 2 to 5 hours a week in the actual creation part of it, just depending on the week.
And then you got to post it. You got to interact with it. It's probably a 10-hour a week job. Like, so I remind people it's not for free.
Yeah.
It's
it's easily enough, an hour to 2 or 3 a night, Saturday mornings. Yeah. Oh, I love it. Absolutely love it. And, you get that idea that pops into your head. You have this grand content strategy all mapped out, Trello board. And then, in the shower, you get an idea. You're like, oh, where's my phone? I got to record this right now.
This is the greatest thing. There's 2 likes. I got to delete it. Where's the delete button? I got to get this post out. I'm telling you, if you're not depressed about the LinkedIn algorithm, then call me, because I don't know anybody who's thinking it's going up or great this year. I'm glad, though, you're still in my feed, Adam. Thanks so much for joining the Magnetic Podcast, brother. I appreciate you. Thanks for joining us from way down in Mississippi, being the first guest we've ever had on the Magnetic Podcast. You really made this one special.
Well, we finally got internet and power, so we're in great shape.
I've been
today.
doing this whole thing from a tin can, so this is magnificent in South Dakota. Thank you, Adam. All right.
Thank you
See
so
listeners.
much.
Take care.